Every so often, I come across an animated movie that looks rough on the outside, but is actually quite good on the inside. Case in point for this video, Snotty Boy, aka Siegel Kitchen. Lord help me, if I get demonetized for saying the name of the movie, I'm gonna lose it. On the surface, Snotty Boy looks rough, but deliberately so. Uncanny faces that are super detailed and fleshy and just overall gross. However, the premise for this movie gave me pause. The story is about a young boy living in post-Nazi Austria during the 1960s. How his town is still stuck in their old ways of thinking, and how he uses art to help him escape their backward ways. Consider my interest piqued. This is a pretty unique setting, and the trailer did grab my attention. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get a hold of this movie online. Despite being released in 2021 in Europe, I couldn't find a copy of it anywhere. God bless you, anonymous P.O. Box mail that sent me this movie on a flash drive with English dubs. I salute you. Wait, not that kind of salute. I'm always excited about animated movies from Europe because they usually do something interesting with their mature rating. Also, allow me to reinforce the sentiment, this is not a kids movie. It is for adults, but in a meaningful way that is more than just potty humor, though I assure you, there are still some crass jokes in this film. Some I can't even allude to in this video because of reasons. Strap in, folks, this one's interesting. But before we start, a quick shout out to this video sponsor, Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses tailored to your needs, shipped right to your doorstep with free shipping in the continental US. No need for movers. This mattress comes rolled up in a box. Just tear away the cardboard and let your mattress blossom. Helix knows we all have different sleeping habits, so their sleep quiz helps you find the right mattress by answering a few questions. Take the quiz with your partner, or hey, in this case, your dog, and it'll line you both up with a perfect compromise. I was away in Australia for a month, and while I loved it, I really miss my Helix. Like, no joke, the Airbnb mattress I slept on did not feel like home. But now that I'm back, I can enjoy my midnight lux. As a side sleeper, the quiz paired me with this mattress, and I drift into sleep the moment I lay down. No tossing or turning, just pure comfort. I've had my Helix for over a year now, and I am a happy, well-rested lad. Helix has a great lineup, including the award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections. There's also the Helix Plus for big and tall sleepers, and the Helix Kids mattress, endorsed by sleep and medical experts. Worried about buying online? Helix offers a 100-day sleep trial. Rest up to 3 months to make sure that you love it. With a 10-year warranty and flexible financing options, premium sleep is more attainable than ever. So if you're in the market for a new mattress, then I highly recommend that you give Helix a shot. They've been a long-standing partner with our channel, and I personally endorse them with every chance that I get. Like, whenever we're done, like with our arrangement or whatever, I will still highly recommend Helix. They are that amazing. It's the best bed I've ever had in my life. I would 100% endorse it. So check out their 4th of July sale by clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to helixsleep.com/Saberspark. You can get 30% off Luxe and Elite mattresses, plus 2 pillows for free, or take advantage of 25% store-wide, but only for a limited time. Thanks again to Helix for sponsoring this video, and now, back to the video. So, what are the origins behind this movie? Apparently, this was the first animated feature film produced in Austria. The filmmakers spent over 10 years working on the production, with drafts of the script going back as far as 2011. This film's aesthetic, tone, themes, and even some of the events in the movie itself are all based on the life and works of well-known Austrian cartoonist, satirist, and caricature artist named Manfred Dykes. Work on the film began in 2013, with Dykes directly involved in the production. Apparently, the script had to be rewritten 5 times before Dykes signed off on greenlighting the movie. While being based on himself, Dykes was never able to see the finished movie, as he passed away in 2016. due to complications from a serious illness, 5 years before the film was eventually completed. Now, as far as visuals go, the aesthetic is pretty rough and kind of in the uncanny valley. It looks like something from the mid-2000s, not 2021. This is based on the work of a caricature artist though, so they're kinda nailing the aesthetic in that regard. So I don't think we can really knock the film for being ugly when that's the goal. Looking at Dyke's work, he really seemed to like stretching and deforming the human face. Most of the examples of his work featured overweight or plump characters, and had open mouths with exposed gums and flesh around the teeth. Dykes apparently liked the extreme overenthusiasm it would give his characters. The dude also found dicks really funny. Not like dick jokes, just the aesthetic of them. Specifically, small dicks. I guess he's potentially Greek. He apparently was quoted in an interview talking about why he liked drawing large men with small dicks. That, quote, "It's ridiculous what trick nature played on man to give them something so ridiculous," end quote. I mean, he's not wrong, but it does kind of clue you in to the wavelength this guy was operating on. The film itself is definitely channeling that kind of vibe. So that makes sense the visuals would be, in a way, intentionally unappealing or at least off-putting. Dykes' work was actively trying to do that all the time, so a movie based on his work would be attempting the same thing. Though I think the move to 3D makes that style a lot less obviously intentional than it does as illustration. We've seen so many 3D films fall into the uncanny valley, so doing it on purpose means you're now in some rather unpleasant company visually. I think the main problem is that if they wanted to replicate the sickly, disturbing caricature that Dykes was known for, I don't think they pushed hard enough with the film's designs. His art is featured prominently in the movie as things like drawings and mural art for plot-specific reasons. And these pieces have a lot more dynamism. To be clear though, I'm only referring to the aesthetics of the models and the art direction itself. The actual animation in the movie, how these characters all move around and stuff, is actually pretty good. I mean, look at this compared to like Dia of the Dead, Finding Jesus, just anything from WoW now. It's not even a competition. Snotty Boy is a far cry from some of the crap that's been featured on here before. It actually looks like a movie, which is not a bar we can cross very often over here on the channel. So what's this movie about exactly? Well, the story follows a young artist referred to as Snotty Boy. Why? Because he's sniffling all the time, I guess. Now, I've been referring to the title of the movie so far as Snotty Boy, since that's the direct translation of the German title of the movie, as well as the nickname for the main character. However, the actual German word is Latzbub. I don't think this name should be used as a direct translation, because even when speaking in English, one of the animators for the movie continued to refer to the character as Latzbub. For the sake of clarity, from now on, I will be referring to the character of Snotty Boy as Latzbub, as the staff of the film do, but still refer to the title of the film itself as Snotty Boy, since not only is it a bit confusing to use the same word for both, but the complete title of the film is a bit too long to constantly refer to. Anyways, Latzbub struggles with being able to express himself, growing up in the 1960s in a small, extremely religious Austrian countryside town, where the shadow of World War II still looms long. From the behavior of most of the villagers to even an old mural with the Nazi war eagle, it's plain to see that some old habits die hard. Latzbub, a talented illustrator and animator, takes to drawing lewd images of his voluptuous neighbor, and he tends to watch her through her window at night. There's a cat there too. His friends discover his sketchbook though, and in a world without the internet, react to them exactly as pubescent teenagers would. They go crazy. One of Latzbub's friends decides this stuff is too good to keep to themselves, so they start making copies of his drawings to sell them at school for some quick cash. Unsurprisingly, this leads to the adults in town finding out what Ratsboob's been up to. Drawing pornographic images of your neighbor and then selling them with your friends would probably face some resistance anywhere. Growing up in a hyper-Christian town in the late 60s though, yeah, he is instantly looked down upon by the rest of the town when they find out. Ratsboob's interest in women takes a turn though when he meets Mariolina, a Romani girl who lives with a traveling caravan trading with the town. What started as an unfocused teenage lust quickly matures into romance as he gets to know Mariolina better. Tensions rise though when Ratsboob stumbles upon Nazi sympathizers, holdovers from the war, and the town who are planning on driving the Romani caravan out of the village by any means necessary, i.e. direct violence. With a town that looks down on him, friends that have betrayed him, and on the shit list of his only direct connection to the Romani caravan, Ratsboob will have to pull out all the stops to save the day. Now, the first problem you'll notice as soon as you start watching the film is the story is tackling a lot of plot. It feels a bit too stuffed with conflicts. Now, I have to applaud the creators who are trying to tackle some serious topics that I'm sure are both relevant to the upbringing of dykes personally, which this film is basically a tribute to, but also probably a sensitive topic for anyone living in Austria and Germany. But it's hard to really appreciate the serious emotional conflicts that are present in the film when so much of the screen time seems so tonally incompatible with trying to treat this subject with any sort of weight. Right off the bat, this movie does its best to utterly stupefy you. This first scene of this movie cold opens with baby Ratsboob gleefully playing around inside of his mother's womb. Before being violently squeezed out and retrieved by a nurse. Guys, I'm not sure I can even show the full version of this clip, but here it is blurred for some kind of context. Take it for what it's worth. Now, I'm not trying to be a prude or anything. The scene itself isn't what I have a problem with. It's just that this is a sequence that lasts almost 5 minutes, which is not an insignificant amount of time out of a runtime of 90 minutes in total. But I wouldn't say it's entirely unnecessary either. After all, it does show Ratsboob creating blotches on his mother's womb, so an early inspiration for drawing, I guess? All in all, a very bizarre scene, and it hits you right out the gate with it. But yeah, it runs on a bit too long in my opinion, and is kind of confusing. What follows, though, is an additional 85 minutes of rapid-fire plot development, as the story hard cuts to Ratsboob as a young teenager, where we remain for the rest of the film. The story quickly splits off in multiple thematic directions at once, with multiple themes spiraling outwards from each other, as the story springs from one to the next without giving any one of them enough real time to develop. And these conflicts are all vastly different degrees of seriousness. A coming-of-age story, paired next to post-World War II bigotry and lingering Nazism, are difficult enough already to pair with each other. Like we have Ratsboob peeping in on some giant-breasted woman next door. And then we have this comedic scene where he fantasizes about her and makes a flip book animation of her naked. So we're already kind of competing with raunchiness and comedy. But then Ratsboob goes downstairs to the bar, and one of the patrons does a Hitler salute because he still has Nazi sympathies? Yeah, that's a bit jarring. But hey, maybe that's the point. Perhaps it's trying to show the new, more expressive ways of art and thought competing against the old ways of tradition and bigotry. Because there are multiple conflicts and a whole Rolodex of characters, and only a 90-minute runtime, characterization can come across as surface levels at times. The conflicts these characters involve themselves in are more hinted at than explored, which is like a real shame because there's a lot of interesting stuff being referenced throughout the film. The problem is that you can't delve into all these at the same time in just a single feature, at least not without an incredibly masterful script. which this movie does not have. I don't know, a coming-of-age story about growing up in a deeply religious small town and struggling with your natural sexual awakening during puberty is a premise for a movie. A story about an awkward teenager already feeling ostracized by his immediate community, finding companionship in a group of outsiders that are even more looked down upon than him is a premise for a movie. A comedic vulgar romp following a creative outcast who gleefully retreats into his own artistic expression and sexual gratification while coming of age in a prudish small town is a premise for a movie. A small town filled with homogenous people struggling to rebuild and find their footing following World War II, while also shrugging off the remnants of bigotry and Nazism that still persist even over a decade later, showcased by interacting with people who were subjugated only a few years earlier, gleefully and willingly by people you now call your neighbors as viewed from the perspective of the next generation, people that have no real context for any of that lingering ideology. Well, that's definitely the premise for a movie. Snotty Boy is all of these things at once. It's just a lot. Not poorly done, but it can get overwhelming at times and quite confusing. In the presentation on YouTube at Pixel Vienna 15, animator for Snotty Boy, Mikael Merkat, starts his presentation with a very impassioned explanation of the film's story, talking about how it must have been confusing for a young child growing up in the countryside of post-World War II Austria, how the entire continent is still reeling from the horrors of the previous decades, how, as you got older, you learn about everything that had happened here only a few years ago, how learning that your own neighbors and family may have contributed to that atrocity firsthand, and that a creative youth surrounded by all this negativity and hatred would struggle to keep his creative spark alive while being so different. In this regards, I really dig the movie. Ratzbub's father, for example, looks to be a defeated German soldier who lost his arm in the war, but doesn't want any trouble now. However, he's pushed around by the town, a man who followed orders and it led him to oblivion? And now he has the chance to make things right with giving his son a more open-minded future? Yeah, I like that concept. I wish the movie dove more into that plot point. But it's kind of there, and that's enough to respect it. A village of Romani who are being discriminated against by the old institutions of the town? The church? The police? Yeah, it kind of reminds you of something. But thankfully, you see adults in the town who reject that prejudice and side for the Romani. That the old Reich fell for a reason, and it was time to move on. Ratzbub drawing on the mural at the end is symbolic of that. Once more, I do wish we could have had a bit more focus, but the intent and sincerity are there, and I respect that. Continuing through the Pixel Vienna presentation and getting more context on Dyke's work, he seems to have been really obsessed with depicting the gross, ridiculous nature of the human body. His work would frequently focus on drawing large men with small dicks, or who have shit their underwear. And then the animator is just talking about how this is what the guy felt like drawing. Humanity at its most absurd. But I did not even know Snotty Boy was based on an artist when I first saw it. So from that perspective, I'm just completely lost with this mismatch of tone. I don't know how much that can be blamed on the viewer's lack of context versus the studio's lack of tonal focus. I don't think it's impossible to juggle these subjects, but as your first feature film, yeah, it's certainly a tall order. I wonder if perhaps this was an entirely fictional story that focused on the absurdity that Dykes like to capture, leaning completely into comedy, without the pitfalls of having to dip into moments of autobiography or heavier social commentary, that the movie could have been a bit stronger because of it. But then again, the script went through 5 revisions before they could get Manfred to sign off on it. Maybe the film did start a lot more focused, and it was his insistence that led to the more scattershot tone? Who can say? There's really no way to be sure. Overall, I appreciate this movie more for what it was attempting to be rather than what it actually is. The film has moments of great animation. The bits that include Manfred's actual art are as beautiful as they are bizarre. There's no denying he was an incredibly talented artist and clearly had a pretty interesting life and outlook on the world. I can see how you'd want to immortalize his unique worldview in a film, while highlighting a lot of what he talked about in his work. But is this a perfect movie? No, not by a long shot. But it definitely spoke from a sincere place and featured a people who are facing internal friction following one of the most catastrophic events in human history. To see budding artists who challenged the old status quo was encouraging, even if the overall plot felt scattered at times and confused. There are certainly worse animated films out there than Snotty Boy. Now just scroll through my most popular videos if you want to see evidence of that. And I would never include Snotty Boy alongside anything like that. It honestly doesn't even make sense to feature it alongside a lot of the other movies I've torn apart in this channel. But neither does it rise to the heights of the animated films I've loved. It's trapped somewhere in the middle, which is oftentimes the worst place to be. It has such great ambition, but fails to make any of that ambition have any impact. That being said, I hope to see more from the people of Austria. They have an incredibly interesting history and culture, and I hope that they can continue to share their story with the rest of the world through their art. Also, give us a proper release for this movie so international audiences can watch it. Allow us to support it. I'm talking about this film and I'm I don't know, we can watch it. Hope that someone sends it to your P.O. box on a flash drive? Yeah, fat chance. Come on, put it up on Amazon or something, please. Everyone must suffer and watch the first 5 minutes of this movie. I demand it.
Conscience